Hello and welcome. This is Lights Out, and away we go with the episode. We're the Formula One podcast for fans and by fans. I'm Will, and as I look across the digital garage, as always, I'm joined by my co-driver, or should I say my co-host, Sam. Hello, Sam. How are you?
Hi, Will. Hi, guys. I'm very well, thanks. How are you? How was your weekend?
That was very good. I'm very good. I'm very hoarse and very husky. It was my brother's wedding at the weekend, which was an amazing weekend, very, very special. And as the best man, I was coming down with a sore throat before it, after lots of drinking and dancing and partying and singing and shouting. My voice is taking a few days to get back, so I've gone down an octave or two. But it was very, very, very good. How about you? How was your weekend?
Well, before I get to that, let's just say congratulations to Greg on behalf of the podcast. If you're listening, Greg, hope you had a lovely weekend.
Yeah. Congratulations from us both.
My weekend was lovely, thank you. Lots of time with Junior. Spent a bit of time gardening today. We went out for a nice picnic with my sister and her kids and her partner yesterday. That was really good. I've actually got an F1 related recommendation for you as well.
Go on.
Whilst Junior was having a nap this afternoon, I watched Mansell Williams Red 5, which is a documentary all about Nigel Mansell and it's all about Nigel Mansell, but with obviously a particular focus on Williams, who he won the championship with in '92. But it's on. I watched it on Sky. Yeah, I watched it on Sky. But it is a really good documentary. It's like an hour and a half long, but it's fantastic. Highly recommend.
I'll give that a watch. Doesn't Sebastian Vettel now own Red 5?
He does. Yeah, he appears in it. Well, that little bit, when he drove it at Silverstone, didn't he, earlier this year?
He did,
that was filmed as part of the documentary, so we got to see that. And Vettel's reaction when he got out of the car was just a picture, because he just looked at Nigel and said, "You're a madman. How the hell did you drive this?" Which was quite enjoyable. So really good documentary. It should be a must, I think, for any F1 fans. So
I'll make sure to check that out. And I went back and rewatched the Guy Martin pit stop when he becomes the pit crew. Very, very good. Would recommend. It's on YouTube.
I'm yet to get on that. I will watch it.
Very good. So we had the Zandvoort Grand Prix. I sadly missed it, so I've caught up and watched the highlights and been reading and some articles about it as well. So Sam, who won the race?
Well, guys, Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen won the race. Well, surprise, surprise. Best driver in the best car. It's a combo to die for. 9 in a row. Totally dominant. It was. Do you know what? It was an awful lot more interesting than I think it would have been if it had been really dry.
Right.
We got two quite big chunks of rain during the course of the Grand Prix that made it quite interesting. But Max was still in a class of his own and totally destroyed everybody. So it doesn't really seem to matter what they throw at him. He just serenely glides his way to victory after victory. And an awful lot could have gone wrong for him as well, I think, yesterday. And yet nothing did. It just serenely wafted his way to yet another victory. Pretty scary. He doesn't even look like he's trying, really. And this was a race where we actually did have to try a little bit. Madness. You watched the highlights, didn't you? What did you make of his utter domination?
Well, he didn't feature much, which was something in itself. You thought for someone like that, for the lead in a dramatic thing, it was more focusing on the race for second and those behind him. But he did look in a different league from just the highlights I saw. And, that first lap, he was miles ahead of the pack by the end of the first lap. He's matched Vettel's record now of 9 consecutive wins. He could go on and win every race of the season, couldn't he? He just looks in that form with that car. He just looks unbeatable. And it feels like we say this every time he wins the race, but he is having an incredible, incredible season. It will go down in history as one of the greatest seasons ever, I think, and rightly so, because he's doing amazing things in that car, and his teammate is definitely making him look even better because his teammate is all over the place, which we'll come on to as well. But I saw that he's now got a lead of 138 points in the World Championship, which is very, very, very depressing, and also very impressive. And I calculated that in theory he could win the World Championship in 3 races time in Japan, which would, so if Checo or someone has a mare in Monza and doesn't score,
there's still like a third of the season left after the Japanese Grand Prix. That's ridiculous.
I know, 6 or 7 races, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's and I think we both saw this on Twitter, or as it's now known as X, that he's only dropped 23 points from the maximum mathematically possible this season, which is less than a race win. That's the level of form he's on. Like, not even Lewis, when he was at his peak, was close to those sort of numbers. So just faultless, really, absolutely faultless.
Yeah.
And no one looks close to laying a glove on him at the moment.
No, and I think this will probably go down as one of his best wins this season, because it was interesting.
Because he had to do stuff to win, right? Rather than just put the car on first and bring it home. He actually had to fight through and manage the wet weather.
Yeah, well, he said actually in his post race, and he said post match then in his post race interviews and stuff, he did say that he found it personally a bit more enjoyable and a bit more interesting because he did actually have to push. And that tells you an awful lot about the rest of the season, which we've discussed many times. So let's not do that again. But yeah, you did actually see him put the foot down a little bit a couple of times during the race, particularly immediately after pit stops. And yeah, there was I think it was after the second set of stops. No, it was after the first set of stops when he came out behind Checo. He was 7 point something seconds behind him, put his foot down, and had overtaken him within 4 laps. It was just like, okay, I mean, and then he just didn't have to try anymore and just ran off and scampered off into the distance. It was he is he's on another planet, I think, at the moment. I think there's probably 1 or 2 drivers down the grid that might give him a run for his money in equal machinery, or at least in a car that could compete. A couple of whom we may well talk about at some point during the rest of this podcast. But yeah, he's just, he is the Thanos of Formula One right now. There is no counter.
He is inevitable.
He is inevitable. Yep.
Yeah, we need Lewis Hamilton to be Iron Man. I like that a lot. And so I suppose you should move on then, because you say there's not much more we can talk about. Max, strong win at his home race. That all those Dutch fans, 100,000 of them, had a great time.
Yeah,
good for them. But the race for second was pretty lively, and the race itself was pretty lively. Even from the coverage, it did look it, and it broke the record for the most overtakes in a single race. It was 153, was it in total?
Yeah, I think it was 160 something.
Oh yeah, 153 was China. It's now like 164, I think it is, from Zandvoort, and 63 of those were all on the second lap. So the wet weather really did, play like because it came down quite quickly after the start of the race, or on the first lap it was really heavy, and with the changing grip that the drivers had, it just meant they were sort of sliding all over the place and passing each other really easily, and no one could have enough grip to sort of fend off someone else. So it was quite entertaining, I thought, and it must have been a good one to watch live, and much better than the snooze fest of Spa before the summer break.
Yeah, it was really good, and as someone who has badmouthed the Dutch Grand Prix in recent times, actually, I did find myself really enjoying it. I mean, never mind the stuff up front, Max and winning and all the rest of it, because that is, as we've alluded to, absolutely inevitable. But the race itself was really good, and on a circuit where it's not always the easiest to overtake, but where the DRS is really powerful, and you throw in like changeable conditions. Obviously, tyre wear is a massive factor when you're switching from inters to softs and stuff as well. It did result in some really good racing, and we saw a lot of overtakes, which was really good. So I really enjoyed the race, actually. Yeah, it was a good one. I don't know if I'm like totally rethinking my it shouldn't be on the calendar position. But it's given me food for thought. I think it would be a bit churlish for me to be like, no, bin it off still, even after a race where we've had the most overtakes ever in a Formula One race. But it was really good.
It can only stay if it rains.
Agreed. Do you know what? I was thinking about this as well. And this is no comment on global warming whatsoever, but I don't remember, when was the last race where it didn't rain this year?
Ooh, good question.
Because I feel like it's rained at every race for the last like 4 or 5 Grand Prix.
Spain, it rained.
Yeah.
Spa, it rained.
Silverstone, it rained. Hungary, it rained.
Monaco, it rained.
Yeah.
The Middle East, Melbourne.
That's so long ago. That's like 5 months ago.
Yeah. Baku didn't rain. Baku, did it?
Yeah, maybe Baku was the last one. Yeah, so it's weird, isn't it? It's kind of I don't remember the last like full race week, particularly race weekend. I don't remember a full weekend where at least one of the sessions wasn't heaving down with rain. So. Yeah.
Well, could that continue into Monza next weekend?
Well, maybe.
My
we had a whole race rained off because of the rain, didn't we?
Yeah.
Because Imola flooded in Emilia Romagna. So
yeah. Well, my brother is on his honeymoon in Milan at the moment, and he said it is very wet there. So
well,
We're on course for it.
I mean, it won't
bit.
matter. Max will still win next weekend, but it might.
Well,
some rain.
we'll come on to that. We're coming because it might not be a foregone conclusion.
Oh, okay.
But back onto this race. I suppose there's quite a few people we want to cover off here. Let's start with Checo Perez. I'm going to give him my Latifi because he's had another really poor weekend. If I'm Red Bull management now, I think I'm now starting to get very concerned about his form and his confidence and whether he's good enough to still be a Red Bull driver. I think it's becoming, it's now a trend. It's now it's happening repeatedly. He's making lots of mistakes. He's throwing points away. He binned it in the first corner in the wet and then was speeding the pit lane, so he kind of got a penalty. So he didn't get the third place, which promoted Gasly. And Gasly was well within that 5-second window. It wasn't like he pushed and it was close. It was, Gasly had it sewn up with a few laps to go. I think it's a really, really poor weekend for someone in the quickest car whose teammate is lightning quick. And I'd be very, very worried if I was Perez because I think he's gonna have to have a really big end of the season to keep hold of that seat. Which is, if I'd said that to you at the start of the season, you said there's no way Checo will be fighting for his Red Bull future and probably his F1 future, really, because I don't know where else he could go unless they took someone like Albon and Perez and Williams took a punt on someone like Perez. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's saving him at the moment really is that they don't need him to be any better than he is currently because Max is so far ahead.
No,
they don't need the Minister of Defense, whatever it was they named him in 2021. The Mexican Minister of Defense, wasn't it? They renamed him. They don't need him for that, and equally, they don't need him picking up podiums every week because Max has accumulated so many points. Red Bull are going to walk the constructors anyway. I think if either of those two things were slightly different, then they might be considering it, and maybe they'll think about it going into next season, but.
Well, that's the thing. We'll probably expect the field to bunch up next season a bit more and people to close the gap. And they can't, if they're in a very fortunate position where they can afford to carry their second driver who's having calamity after calamity. Whereas, if you've got Ferrari, Mercedes, or Aston Martin who get their act together and they're challenging them for wins, and then that constructors title is no longer a dead cert. They can't afford to carry a second driver like that, especially someone as experienced as Checo Perez. He's not a rookie; he's a very, very experienced Formula One driver. So I think the thinking will definitely change when he gets to the winter because I think we might not be in this fortunate position where we can, we've got it all sewn up completely, and we can afford to carry someone that's making mistake after mistake. And Red Bull have shown they can be ruthless. If this is 2021. Perez gets sacked. I think there's no way they carry someone like that. They've done that before with Gasly. He was sacked. Albon as well. He was sacked. They will be ruthless if they need to be, and it wouldn't surprise me if they get to that at the end of the season if they're worried about the pack being much closer to them.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I feel a bit bad. I do feel a bit bad for Checo because he's sort of going through exactly what so many second drivers have gone through down the years, where they start a season full of hope. And we saw it with Bottas with Hamilton so many times. I mean, just go back and watch Drive to Survive and some of the preseason stuff where Bottas is like, I'm going to beat him this year. This is my year. And, those drivers always come into the season thinking they're going to do it. And they win a couple of races early doors. And there are a few races early in the season that really favour Checo and how he drives. So probably gives you a bit of a some false hope, I suppose. But that there always comes a point, I think, for those drivers when they're up against particularly someone like Max, who, as we've talked about, is just totally dominant. Like I'm genuinely of an opinion now where there's maybe one or two drivers that could even come close to him in a Red Bull right now. So at some point, a realization sets in for those drivers, and it happened with Bottas. It happened with Ricciardo, I think, as well, when he was racing against Verstappen.
Yeah.
At some point, those drivers realize they're never going to be able to beat them, and they don't understand how. And that's this comes out in the Mansell documentary. Actually, it's worth watching. Where there are occasions where Mansell's driving with someone, and he was a bit of a rookie at the time, and he couldn't believe how much faster they were than him, and he just didn't understand. And he was a lucky one. He found the speed and found a way of driving and stuff. But it doesn't happen for everybody, and most times, particularly in modern Formula One, it doesn't. And there's just a genuine surprise with those people that they can't compete with who they're up against. And then, confidence takes a massive hit. And I think we've seen that with Checo this season because he's not been anywhere close to par, let's say. Par for Checo is finishing second or third every weekend, no question. in that car. I mean, and he's just gone through a massive, or feels like he's going through a pretty enormous sort of confidence problem, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Like, what can you do? Like, you're watching your teammate drive off and beat you by 30 seconds every week, like
Yeah.
in normal conditions. What can you do?
You're probably trying even harder to be able to match him, and then you're probably, you're probably overdriving. You're over concentrating, and then you're slipping and you're making mistakes. Then you make one error, and then you sort of beat yourself up, and then next thing you know, you made another mistake, and then you're really starting to question your ability and. Why can't you do the same thing as the driver? I think maybe next time we have a break in the calendar, we should have a look at who's the best number 2 driver, because you could probably look back through Formula One history. There's, if you looked at drivers that have been incredibly dominant, and then who's been the best at supporting them or being as close to them without sort of tailing off, because Bottas was pretty good, and he did suffer in that he was never really in the championship title fight at all, but he still brought the car home in points. So someone like, just off the top of my head, I was thinking like Rubens Barrichello, he was very good at supporting Michael Schumacher, and he was very quick as well. And similar when he was number 2 to Jensen at Brawn. We should definitely go back and have a look through Formula One history to see who the best number 2s are. Mark Webber also springs to mind, but I don't think Perez is going to be high up on that list of the best number 2s.
No, probably not.
And so with Perez having a bit of a shocker, we did see the return of Mr. Fernando Alonso. He's been very absent for about 5-6 races. He's back at the front of the grid, and he's causing problems, and he's charging through the grid. He had a very, very good start to be up from, was it 5th to 3rd within 1-2 laps, was it? I think he was.
Yeah, and he was one of those that came in on lap 1 as well and benefited from switching to the Inter straight away. So,
and what did you put it down to? Have they found some car performance, or do you think he just got very lucky in the sort of conditions with it being very wet, or is it
no? They found some performance. Aston Martin have a new floor.
Ooh, what's the major things of it?
Well, do you remember they developed the car in a direction, didn't they? I don't know, like 4 or 5 races ago, and just lost a load of, or felt like they lost a lot of performance. And
Barcelona, they kind of went off in the wrong direction.
Yeah, ironic for Alonso driving his home race. Well, unfortunate, I would say, rather than ironic. So they've got a new floor. I'm not exactly sure what changes they've made and what the issues were, because it's obviously all under the car. Like, if it was above the car, I could make or people could make a relatively educated guess about what the issues were. But because it's all floor, and until you bin the car to such an extent they have to lift it up on a crane, you never really get to see it, a la Monaco. So not really sure, but whatever it is they've done, they've done to the new floor, it works very, very well. Alonso, I think, drove a really good race as well. Like, he was super feisty, like keeping up with Checo as far as he could. Kept the pressure on him, and then obviously, I don't know if he forced Checo into that mistake into turn 1, but you got to be there to pick up the pieces as and when those things happen, and he was just driving a really solid race. But for Max, we'd have had another Alonso Grand Prix victory. Just a really solid weekend. He was good all weekend, actually, Alonso. I mean, even in qualifying, like a few kind of big names had issues, some of which we'll talk about, but he just sort of sauntered through and just put in a really solid performance for Aston Martin. It's kind of exactly what you want, really, when you've been a team that struggled as they have the last few races. Bring some upgrades, just think we're going to get a solid result together now as a team, and progress with the direction they're going in with the development of the car. So just a bit of both. I think a bit of car, a bit of fortune as well, because the changeable conditions favoured him definitely, and getting the Inters on early served him well. But then he still had to drive a really good race to finish on the podium, and looking back to his best again.
And he's got that experience as well. He's most experienced on the grid. He's driven so many races. He knows when to call the car in, when what to do in those sort of circumstances. He's probably had multiple races like that in the past, so he's not phased by it as well. It'd be interesting to see how Aston do, towards the end of the season, because this could be quite good if they sort of had a bit of resurgence and started to challenge for podiums again, because they were a real force at the start of the season, and they really did fade away. And just on the topic of Aston, did you see the rumours that apparently Lance Stroll is considering quitting Formula One to go become a tennis player?
Yeah.
Not sure about that. I think that's someone getting a bit carried away. That's up there with the Fernando Alonso is dating Taylor Swift rumours that we had this season as well.
You brought those rumours to the podcast, if I remember correctly.
I'm just reporting what I saw online. I did not come up with them, and I definitely did not come up with Lance Stroll playing tennis. But anyway,
I kind of love his confidence, though. I mean, there was a quote during the round, something to the effect of, "I'm a really good tennis player. I mean, I'm not saying I could beat Novak and whatever, some of the best tennis players, Alvarez, but like Alcaraz rather. But he was like, I don't know, maybe if I got into it and played a bit more and stuff, I'd give them a run for their money. I was just like, you're talking about like one of the greatest tennis players ever to have lived. And you think
I'd love to see him play Djokovic, just to Djokovic beat him 6-0, 6-0, 6-0. I think that would be absolutely.
It would be quite funny, wouldn't it?
That would be very Lance Stroll.
We'd have to award him a Latifi on a weekend when he's not even in a car.
An honorary Latifi.
Yes.
And so Alonso was second. We should talk about Mr. Pierre Gasly. Bit of surprise to see him on the podium after the horrors that they've had this season, and good for him as well, being in the right place at the right time, and like I say, closing that gap to stop Perez from nicking it off him. But he seemed to have a good weekend, sort of climbing through the field and being fortunate to be in third place at the end.
Yeah, he did. So he benefited for some really good strategy, which his teammate did not. Got put on the right tyres at the right time and performed really well. Yeah, I mean, it's no mean feat for him to be able to keep up with Checo at all in a Red Bull in those conditions. He drove really well. I think if Max is Thanos, I think Alpine might be like the Joker of Formula One. Like
you've gone from MCU to DC now.
Hey, what can I say? I've got a varied palette when it comes to my comic book references.
What next?
I just think Alpine, they just thrive on the chaos. Like if you think about the two podiums they've got, I mean, like the one in Monaco was kind of broadly on merit and Esteban put in a really good lap, but it was wet. Like they seem to, whenever it chucks it down with rain, and there's a bit of madness in the race. You see 160 odd overtakes and 2 buckets of rain fall all over the circuit during the race, and everybody has to switch from slicks to inters, back to slicks, back to inters again. Some people get put on the full wet tyre, and all that kind of madness that ensues. It does feel to me like Alpine often are the ones that find themselves in a situation to benefit the most. But that's not taking it away from Gasly. Like he did drive a really good race, and like once he got the inters on, he had really good pace. Like the Alpine was brilliant. Like kept up with the Red Bull for the most of the race, like during the lion's share of the lap. So can't complain too much about that. He's pretty good in those conditions, I think, in general as well. So yeah, really good weekend. He was very pleased as well. Did you hear his radio?
No, I've not seen that.
Oh, he was going mental. Like when they said to him it was P3, he was just shouting yes, like down the radio.
Nice. I do like Pierre Gasly. He seems a nice guy.
Yeah, no, I was very pleased for him. We'll come on to the predictions in a moment, and that's why I'm slightly less pleased now than I was yesterday. But yeah, no, really good weekend, and kind of exactly what Alpine needed. Like they just needed a result and a bit of a break from all the madness. And we listeners, go back, listen to the recent episode that we did on them to understand what's going on there if you like. But yeah, they're on track. They did a really good job, and they got the strategy for Gasly just right as well. So yeah, very good.
On the topic of getting strategies right, a team that didn't seem to get their strategies right at all were Mercedes. With them seemed to think that the weather was not going to be as bad as it was, so left the drivers out for longer than they probably should have been. And they didn't feature much in the highlight package, but they didn't come across as happy. And I think as well, they were predicting to be up for, challenging for the win or be on the podium. Mm-hmm. And neither driver were anywhere near the podium. Well, George got unlucky by being tagged by Lando Norris. But, Lewis wasn't close to the podium either as well. What do you make of Mercedes as well? And I think McLaren, we also want to cover McLaren as well, because they've also had a bit of a poor weekend.
Yeah, Mercedes had a shocker, I think. So I've given them my Latifi.
Right.
First time I've awarded them one this season.
Big moment. So we're not biased. Just we're not fully pro Mercedes.
No, and honestly, I think if Ferrari had the weekend Mercedes had, the memes on Twitter, the artist formerly known as Twitter, would have been, I mean, delicious for podcast makers, obviously, because the content is get it in my veins. But yeah, like for Mercedes, it was so bad. So I've made a list, Will, of the things Mercedes did wrong over the course of the race weekend. Okay.
Far away.
So it all started during qualifying, and they decided to offset Lewis's run plan with everybody else in Q2. So whilst Lewis was doing hot laps, bear in mind the circuit is, it's a postage stamp. It's a tiny little circuit. There's always loads of traffic, as you would expect. They decided to offset him with the entirety of the rest of the grid. So every time Lewis did a quick lap, he was trying to get round people who were doing warm-up laps. He got held up 3 times during the course of Q1 and Q2. And in Q2, the particularly bad one was Yuki held him up and then got a penalty, as you would expect. But the fact that the Mercedes put him in that situation, I was watching it and I was fuming. I texted you, didn't I? And I just said, shit show.
Yeah, you did.
And you were like, what's going on? I was like, don't worry about it. Enjoy the wedding. I'll tell you later. But Mercedes are just bugging it, basically. Then they started Lewis on the medium tyre, right, in the race. Everybody else started on the soft tyre because they knew it was going to rain. And the best tyre to have when it's going to be a bit damp and slippery is the soft tyre, if you're not on an inter or a wet tyre, obviously, because there's more grip and you get them up to temperature quicker. So Lewis is the only car out of all 20 starting on the medium. Madness. And then it buckets down with rain. They don't pit either car, and you're a bit like, okay, that's probably not the best decision. Lots of other people have come in. Checo goes 20 seconds faster on the intermediate, right? That's his second lap. They don't bring either car in with everybody else like Checo, so they carry him, send him around. You're thinking, right, bring Lewis and George in lap 2. You've missed the boat on lap 1, fine, but bring them in on lap 2. They left them both out to do another lap, right?
Deary me.
On the slicks. They lost more time. They finally bring Lewis in on lap 3 for his inters, and he comes out stone dead last. And then they bring George in. Lap 4. George did 3 laps on slicks in the pouring rain, and like when it and by the way, in the middle of lap 2, the heavens absolutely open. So I'm sort of with you on the Mercedes weatherman, weather woman, weather person, whoever it was, probably dropped the ball a bit, but the data was there. Like all they had to do was look at Checo's times and be like, oh shit, we should bring them in now, and they didn't. Left them out for ages, and they were both just running right at the back, and it was terrible. They left Lewis out for exactly. They left Lewis out for so long on the mediums that the rain was still coming down as he was driving on the medium. Dropped into last, and then it was just an absolute like catalogue of errors, and it's a shame because particularly Lewis was absolutely rapid. Like he was last, but he pulled that car up to 6th. Could have been 5th, but for some brilliant science defending and no DRS towards the end of the race. It was a disaster class that we're just not used to seeing from them. I don't think we'll see it again, probably this season. No. I should imagine Toto will be having some very, very serious conversations with people.
How many headphones do you think you broke in the race?
Yeah, probably quite a few. But you do just think like, how many opportunities are Mercedes going to have to win a race this year? It's not going to be many, is it? And this was probably one of them. Changeable conditions, lots of madness, loads of pit stops, lots of opportunity for overtakes. They had a really good car for the circuit and for the conditions. They've got one of the best drivers ever.
In wet as well. They've got one of the best drivers
in the wet. Well, they've got two. They've got 2 brilliant drivers in the wet. Yeah, George has shown it plenty of times as well.
Yeah.
And both of them got totally screwed by terrible strategic decisions. But for Lewis driving the wheels off the car and making like 14 overtakes, it would have been pretty embarrassing. It would have been a pretty embarrassing weekend for them. So George was very upset. He didn't understand. He was on the radio saying, I was forecast a podium. How have we fucked this up so much, basically? Sorry, you're going to need an explicit rating for this podcast. Because I was really annoyed about it. Because I looked at the conditions and I thought, these are good conditions for both of them. I know Lewis was starting 13th, and that's the other thing, by the way. Lewis was running 13th. Like, it's not like he was running 2nd and they just missed the boat. They had so much opportunity to bring him in. But whatever, it's fine. Ship sailed. I've made my peace with it. But there were a lot of points left on the table. Certainly a podium and potentially more. You never know. So, bit of a shame.
I mean, if you're going to have a clanger, do it in a season where you're nowhere near the title fight. If you're doing that, if that happened in a title fight weekend, it'd be absolutely, like, furious. But it still sounds like it was a slam dunk Latifi. If it's their first one they've got, but they've done it in style, so fair play to them. Congratulations on their first Latifi. You've won it well.
Yeah, no, they definitely have. Slam dunk is definitely the right word. They absolutely dunked on both their drivers. Very frustrating for both of them, I think. I mean, George was not happy. I mean, he obviously started pretty well. He got screwed by all the pit stop madness at the start, didn't get brought in. They put him on the hard tyre to run to the end, and then, of course, it rained again, so he had to come in anyway and put more inters on. Just everything about the... I don't understand why they put him on the hard tyre. That was another decision. I was like, why have you put him on the slowest tyre, knowing you don't need to use the hard tyre? You've got loads of mediums and softs kicking around because everyone was running inters and stuff all through qualifying. What are you doing? Like, you don't need to. And every forecast going was saying there was going to rain. There was at least going to be some rain between then and the end of the race. And then, lo and behold, with 10 laps to go, the heavens opened, and he had
they
to
weren't
come in.
ready for it.
Um,
Whoever's in charge of their weather or whatever with their weather system, someone is getting in a lot of trouble or having to explain themselves what has gone horribly wrong there.
I just don't understand it, because like they all have access to the same radar, and we were watching it during the race. Like, you can see the screen, you can see the massive like red purple splodge coming in. You're like, it's going to rain in like 5 minutes time. They can be really precise. So I don't know what they were doing.
But if you're seeing other teams react, like what is the value of going? Oh no, they're wrong. But Checo's going 20 seconds a lap quicker, but we'll keep going. And also, why did they not double stack them? That surely made more sense to do them both in the same lap, and that takes slightly longer than put George out for an extra lap. Yeah. Well, congratulations. They did deserve the TV from what he's done. I mean, that's not all of that made the highlights package. So I'm glad you've got me up to speed on that as well.
Yeah, I was making notes because I was studying, getting more annoyed. I was like, how many bad decisions can you fit into one weekend?
Get out your system, and vent it onto the page. I mean, someone that had a very good weekend was Albon. Again, he just looks like he's in such control of that car, and he's leading that team so well. I saw some of the moves he put on a few people. I just love the guy. I think he's such a nice personality. He's having such a good season, and he's scoring lots of points. Williams.
Yeah, they're doing really well. I mean, this wasn't really a race anybody expected Williams to be good at. I mean, Albon was quite funny in his post race. He was asked, did that exceed your expectations? And he sort of said yes. And then they asked him where the pace came from, and he said, I don't know, because they weren't forecasted to finish in the points at all, because they've got a car that's really kind of low drag, quite quick on the straights, but not great through the corners. And Zandvoort's a very high downforce kind of circuit where cornering speed is sort of critical really to success. So yeah, it came out of nowhere, but it looks like they've developed the car in such a way they've got a bit more of a complete package now. They're not just a kind of low drag speed demon straight line car. And yeah, he looked in really impeccable form, mixing it with some very, very good drivers. I mean, it was a match for the McLarens, I thought, which is no mean feat. I should say Hamilton overtook Norris as well on pure pace. So Mercedes had a really good package. Yeah, both teams did well. But yeah, great for Williams, picking up points. They're sort of comfortably in 7th in the constructors now, and if they carry on the way they're going, I can't see any reason why they can't earn a load more points over the next 10 races. So,
Hasn't he scored more points than 3 teams?
Yeah, he's single-handedly beating 3 whole teams. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very.
Whereas Max Verstappen is single-handedly beating 9 teams.
yeah.
And I suppose we should bring back our feature, William on Williams. Sargent, not a good one from him. He had a steering failure, so ended up crashing. Do you think he should be worried about his future in F1? He's yet to score a point. He's had a few incidents where he's crashed or the car has failed on him. He's not making many errors. He's not Nicholas Latifi, but do you think he should be worried about his future in Formula
1? A little bit. I mean, he's going to get to the end of the season. I don't think James Vowles and everybody else are going to bin him off before then. No. I mean, I also don't think there are necessarily candidates out there who are going to come in and make a massive difference. So,
Mick Schumacher?
He's not. No, like I like Mick Schumacher a lot, but I don't think he's not going to be the one to come in and start guaranteeing you points finishes.
Yeah, true,
I don't think
true.
so. They may as well stick with Sargent for the time being. But yeah, he needs to score some points. Let's say between now and the end of the season. I think if he's still on 0 points by the time the season ends, he'll be out. They'll have to replace him. He was a bit unlucky this weekend. I mean, he got the car to Q3. That's a pretty sterling effort for him as a rookie. But yeah, he's being pretty well dominated by Albon. He's passed up a couple of good opportunities now for points. I think there was an opportunity for some points there yesterday. There was nothing he could do. I mean, he had a steering issue that forced him understeered him wide and off. It wasn't like he made a mistake and just binned the car. But I think that sort of cumulatively over the course of the season so far, we've seen enough errors, and because he crashed the car in qualifying as well, and at the end of, right at the start of Q1, we've seen enough errors and enough opportunities passed up that like you can make a bit of an assessment that he's a bit of a nearly man at the moment. He really needs to find a way to pick up some points soon, because otherwise the pressure will keep building and building, and we'll see more errors. And
that's a very, very good description. He's very much a nearly man. Whereas I think if you look at the other rookie in the season in the sport this season, Oscar Piastri just looks polished and like ready to be a Formula 1 driver. Whereas Logan Sargent did not set Formula 2 alight. Was not the best driver in Formula 2 and was probably slightly undeserving of getting the promotion to Formula 1. And there are probably better drivers in Formula 2, but also in probably like IndyCar as well. There's quite a couple of drivers over there that are quite keen to come to the sport. And, I think he's definitely shown that he's not the finished article and ready to up and running, but he kind of needs to get going. I'd say Zhao, is it Zhao?
Zhou.
Zhao, like in Joe. That's what I need to remind myself. Joe, like I think he had a better season last season. He put in some better performances and looked more polished, and he was a better driver in Formula 2. So, it would be interesting to see how Sargent does the rest of the season.
Monza feels like a really good opportunity for Williams in particular, I think, and their package, but particularly him. He's not going to have a better. There's not going to be a circuit that suits that car better, I think. So if he's going to score points, it's going to be next weekend, I would have thought.
Yeah, and even if he just gets 10th, that'd be a really good return. He doesn't need to be getting 5th and 6th places. He just needs to be getting a point. So a 10th would be a good result for him. But we'll see how they do. And with that, we'll take a quick break. Hello, welcome back from the break. Hope you had a jolly old time. A very good weekend for the Dutch Grand Prix. 97% of the spectators of the 100,000 used sustainable travel to get there. So well done to the organisers for doing that. I saw footage of all the bicycles parked up, which is very, very Holland. But yeah, good to see a sport really embrace that and try and so many people turning up, and to get 97% is very, very impressive.
I wonder what the other 3% did. I assume they must have driven, unless there's another form of transport.
Or they came in helicopters.
Yeah, I bet you. Formula 1, that's exactly what that was.
yeah, the ultra elite were coming in then. But
the tulip barons.
The tulip barons, indeed. I suppose we should talk about one of the main stories of the weekend, and it didn't happen in the race. It was in was it qualifying or FP2? FP2.
No, it must have been FP2. Yeah,
FP2 was
that's
Daniel.
right, it was,
was Daniel Ricciardo's crash. So Piastri misjudges the corner and goes off, and then I think Ricciardo is trying to sort of react to that, and he then goes off in at the same corner. But his crash was worse because the steering wheel quite violently jolts, doesn't it? And he thwacks him in the hand and wrist, and he was seen coming out of the car like holding his wrist, and then was taken to hospital. It turns out he's broken his wrist, which is pretty nasty. He's had a metal plate put into it to sort of help it to heal. But yeah, what did you make of Ricciardo's nasty crash?
Yeah, it didn't look great. It's quite a weird accident actually. If you watch it,
it was.
Yeah, because
it wasn't what I was expecting.
No, you'd have thought it would have just been he's lost the car or something and had a shunt, but. Yeah, he sort of tried to. He obviously must have seen Piastri going off pretty late because I thought Piastri was quite far ahead of him on the roads, and he went off, and then Ricciardo comes along sort of a few seconds later, and it's not like visibility wasn't totally terrible, and he was taking evasive action, but for some reason that evasive action resulted in him crashing into the same barrier that Piastri had. It was a bit of a weird. It was a very unusual crash.
Piastri, wasn't it?
Sorry.
He crashed a bit further. Piastri crashed a bit in front of him.
That's right.
Which you think he would react to it afterwards and be behind him?
Yeah, it would just go the other direction. Like it was because it was on just you could have just gone to Piastri's left potentially, or at least tried to. I mean, he must have thought about it. I mean, he's a professional racing driver. He clearly must have reacted in the way that most would have done. But it just looks weird, like when you see it on TV. So yeah, bit of a shame for him. Yeah, it didn't look like a nice accident. I mean, I guess he's fortunate. It's just a broken wrist and nothing more serious because he'll be back running in a few races' time probably, or a couple of races' time.
Yeah, they were saying that usually for that, for a normal human, it would take 3 or 4 months to recover from that. But because of the surgery and the strength in his arms and stuff as well, Formula 1 driver, they think he could be back in time for Singapore. So nice. it will be interesting to see when he's back in the car. I know they've said that Liam Lawson, who will come in a second, he's going to be in the car for Monza, which is completely predictable. But yeah, I think Danny Rick will be annoyed that he's going to be out of action because he's using this as an audition, right, to get the Red Bull seat, and he's going to be robbed of that. But as long as Checo keeps bidding it and making mistakes, he probably feels like he doesn't need to be in the car as much as he probably needed to a couple of races ago. But yeah, Liam Lawson, the junior driver, the New Zealander. What did you make of him? I didn't see much of him in the coverage, but from what I've heard good things.
He looked very good. Yeah, he looked really comfortable actually in the car. Had some quite fun wheel-to-wheel action with Charles Leclerc. Put a nice move on Max Verstappen as well to unlap himself, which he didn't have to do, but he did. And yeah, finished a pretty respectable 13th in the end. So yeah, a very good weekend for him. Pretty good audition. I think Monza will be another good one. I do worry a little bit for AlphaTauri at Monza.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of home territory for them, isn't it? But the car doesn't look great on high-speed power circuits like that one. So we'll see. Fingers crossed they'll be competitive and we can see him sort of battling in the midfield. Never know, maybe score a point if there's some carnage up front. But yeah, no, he looks really good. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he got a drive. I mean, I think if Sargent continues to struggle, I mean, they'll have to prize him out of the Red Bull program, which isn't particularly easy, but they did it with Albon before. Yeah. He could well be a pretty good option for somebody. Yeah, definitely.
Well, he could. If you think Ricardo takes Perez's seat and Perez gets dropped completely by the team, he could be a very good AlphaTauri driver for next season. It could be him and Yuki as a partnership.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about the Checo thing. I'm not sure. I see them dropping him.
Interesting.
Actually. I mean, I would, and so would you. But you're looking. Yeah. We're both looking at this through the kind of. Wouldn't it be great to have someone competitive in the car?
Yeah,
that isn't like just miles off it. Whereas, I think unless it I mean, the only situation I could see it happening is if it's much closer early doors next season. Like if a Ferrari or a Mercedes get themselves into the fight, and Leclerc or Hamilton or whoever have like won a couple of races at the start, and Checo's had quite a poor performance, hasn't helped Max out. And they're thinking, oh, this is going to be a really close world championship now. Maybe they'll make a change. But as long as Max is just walking it and no one can get within, a second of him in qualifying or within 30 seconds of him in a race, regardless of the situation, I guess they don't have to worry too much about their second driver. And the car's bulletproof. Like they haven't had a single failure yet, have they?
No,
they've not had a single DNF yet. I mean, a lot of teams haven't, but so I'm less confident of that happening, but there will be seats available, I think. Yeah, either at AlphaTauri, if Ricciardo decides not to continue next season, that's possible.
Yeah.
You've got Alfa Romeo in the mix. I mean, they're not doing too great. I'm not necessarily sure that Bottas will stick around for another season. Don't know.
They're saying Joe. Well, they're saying Bottas is either clinging on till they become Audi, or he's going to tap out. And then there's also saying Joe. I saw reports on Twitter saying that Joe may have losing some of his funding that he's got, some of the backing he's got, and that's obviously a big thing for them, and they could maybe afford to be a bit pickier if they're go on talent rather than just on talent and money. So maybe they might go for someone a bit different as well. But yeah, it will be. Yeah, well, Haas have confirmed, haven't they?
Yeah,
they've got Magnussen and Hulkenberg, which is a smart move from them, really.
Yeah.
And there's not many people. There's not many people that were drivers. There's not a big pool of ex-Formula 1 drivers waiting to come back into the sport. It's probably just Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, which is not much of a pool to pick from.
No.
And then you're taking a punt on IndyCar or a junior from F2, which I don't think there aren't any mega standouts at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I suppose does that conclude our chat of the actual race? Should we come on to our predictions then?
Yes.
Of the race, because I'm very intrigued. You've given a few hints throughout the episode about what's gone down. So over to you. What were the scores on the doors?
All right. So Monza Grand Prix results. So
not Monza.
Oh, sorry, Monza. What am I talking about? Zandvoort Grand Prix results. Monza will come to shortly. Zandvoort Grand Prix results. So you had Kevin Magnussen, who you predicted to finish in 15th, and he finished in 16th. So you picked up 1 point.
Oui.
Very good. You had Oscar Piastri, who you predicted to finish in 7th. He finished in 9th, Picked up 2
Okay.
points. Very
Happy
good.
with that. Happy
And
with
then the
that.
one you slipped on a little bit was you had Zhou Guanyu predicted 14th, and he finished in 18th. So you got 4 points for him. So you finished on a total of 7.
Okay.
Very respectable.
I feel that was a safe bet. To go 14th, it was a safe one to go because it could have gone one or two ways.
So I'm going to do mine in reverse order.
Okay.
I had Daniel Ricciardo, and we spoke pre-podcast and agreed that I would just take whatever Liam Lawson's result was.
Yeah.
I predicted Ricciardo to finish in 14th. Lawson very helpfully finished in 13th, so I picked up 1 point.
Nice.
I then matched you with Lewis. I had Lewis Hamilton predicted 4th. He finished 6th, so I picked up 2 points.
Quite close so far.
And then I had Pierre Gasly, who I predicted to finish in 12th. And he finished in 3rd. So I picked up 9 points because Alpine carnage resulted in them somehow picking up a podium. So I finished on 12 total. So yeah, you've increased your advantage by 5 this week. Well done.
Wahey. Well, I mean,
Bloody Alpine. They let me down again. I feel like Alpine and Aston Martin have screwed me many times this season, and McLaren once, but I've forgiven for that because they were rubbish back then. But yeah, God, Alpine, dear.
But you're still happy. You're still happy that Pierre got his podium right.
I am,
right?
of course. I'll be happy right up until the point I have to submit the forfit and buy some bloody Red Bull merchandise to wear on the podcast next season.
It might be a max unwinnable. What did you say? If he wins every race, from now to the end, you've got to get something.
A commemorative Max winning everything T-shirt or something.
Yeah. Well, they might have some good 10 wins in a row or 17 wins in a row, whatever it ends up being. So
yes,
you can get on that as well. And so coming on to Monza, I should say I teased this at the start. There is something called the Monza curse. And so apparently since 2019, every driver who's won Monza encounters misfortune the following year. So Charles won, and then the following year he binned it massively into the wall, which was that bit that went kind of viral on Drive to Survive because they over dramatized the crash when it wasn't as bad as it was. They used footage of him crashing, recording of him crashing from something somewhere else. Yeah, exactly. And then with Gasly, he crashed again the following year. Danny Rick broke down, and then Max won last year. So what's going to happen to Max this year? And has anyone got Max in the prediction game? Let's find out.
All right. Your first driver, number 4, his goatedness, Lewis Hamilton.
God, we get him so often.
I know. I think we've had him three in a row now.
Wow. Lewis at Monza. You know what? I'm gonna back the goat. It's my brother as well. I want him to come third.
Third.
Yeah, third. I was gonna change the second, but no, we've got to stick with what we say. I'm going third.
Okay, interesting. All right. Then you got number 18, Kevin Magnussen. You just had. You got him again. He didn't let you down this week, did he?
I'm gonna go 14th again.
Okay. And then you got, and this is a tricky one, number 6, Charles Leclerc.
Oh God. Ferrari at their home race in a terrible season.
It's a recipe for pantomime.
I'm going to go 7th. God, that feels really mean saying 7th for Ferrari at Monza.
So, okay. All right. That's it. That's interesting because I actually think Ferrari is going to favour them, that circuit. Ferrari and Williams are going to be the point scoring others, I think.
But Ferrari are the meme. They will cock it up somehow. They will make some unforced error.
Yes, I agree. There are a lot of factors on your side with that prediction. So, very good. Okay. I got so this is quite I don't know what I'm going to do with these 3. I haven't got Max, but I'm really tempted to predict somebody else to win the race because I feel like the curse.
Fernando Alonso.
He's equaled Vettel's record, but he's not beaten it yet.
Yeah.
And Monza could be a really good circuit for a couple of other teams. Okay, all right. So first of all, I got Checo, number 2.
Okay. Do you back him? Is he going to pull it together and get it up to number 1?
I think it's almost impossible for that Red Bull to not finish in the top 2, surely, on that circuit. I can't. So I really should have. I should know what Checo's.
He's too hard to predict. He's probably one of the hard ones to predict.
I'll back him. I'm gonna go. I feel sick. Red Bull 1-2. I'll go Checo second.
Oh, I thought you were gonna go first for a second then.
No. No, the one I was going to go for first is the next one. So
Oh.
I got number 8, Lando Norris. I fancy Lando to win his first race.
Oh, nice. Are you going to go for first then, or are you just you teasing
No,
it?
because I've gone Checo second now, and I suppose it's the only situation in which Lando wins Max DNFing, probably.
Yeah.
And if anyone's going to finish second, it's going to be Checo, isn't it? So I am tempted, but it's hard to envisage Max not winning at the moment.
Yeah.
As fun as it would be.
This curse could be a load of rubbish as well.
It could. So I'm gonna go Lando third. I think McLaren will be at the races next weekend.
Ooh.
And then I got number 3, Fernando Alonso. And I'm going to go 4th. So I've gone 2, 3, 4 for my predictions.
So you're not predicting a good weekend for Mercedes then?
No. Doesn't look like it, does it?
No.
I'm sure Lewis will be there or thereabouts, but I don't know. Aston Martin.
He's not going to win the podium.
No. Aston Martin, new floor.
Unless Lewis gets the win after Max DNFs.
I mean, that would be amazing. I mean, put it this way. If the price to be paid for seeing someone else, particularly a driver I like, winning a race this season is I have to lose the prediction game, I will gladly pay it at this point. Because I'm miles behind anyway. I may as well.
Whatever it takes.
And obviously the British bias is kicking in. I want it to be one of Lando or Lewis or Piastri.
Or George.
Or George, yeah. I mean, I'd take any of them, really. Like, I would be.
Or Albon.
I mean, could you imagine if Williams win a race? That would be so good.
Imagine if Albon wins his first race. Oh,
that would be amazing.
Oh,
you see, you're building hope. You're building hope, and I'm going to tune in for FP1 on Friday, and Max is going to be like 8 seconds ahead or something. I'll be like, well, yeah, screw it.
Oh, and so we'll see. I mean, we feel like we've done our predictions for the race win. It could be Max or it could be someone different, I think. So I mean that's an obvious thing to say, but it could be an unexpected one. Hopefully, Monza always sometimes serves up a good one. So I'm going to say I'm not going to hope for it. I'm not going to pray for it, but I'm just going to point out in the past Monza has thrown out some good curveballs. Yeah.
Any situation in which Max doesn't win next weekend, the race is bound to be good.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. I think that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. Remember to subscribe and leave a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you enjoyed the podcast, why don't you share it with a friend? Hopefully they enjoy it more than I enjoyed Mercedes catastrophically doing everything they could to ruin Lewis and George's races yesterday.
Very good. Very good.
The taking notes was a good element of catharsis, but I'm still
annoyed. And you've got it out your system as well by giving them a Latifi. So you're on the steps of forgiveness. And,
we'll let them know. We'll let them know. Drop them a line. Just say lads, you've been awarded your first Latifi this season.
I'll tag them on Instagram.
Yeah. All right. On Twitter we are at Lights Out Lads, and on Instagram, as Will just mentioned, we are at the Lights Out Pod. Will, we're off to Italy.
No Italian accent from you there?
Not in this episode.
Needs a bit of work.
Terrible.
Get practicing some an intro phase for next week. But yeah, that wasn't your best. But yeah, no. Let's hope it's a good one. Let's see what the weather serves up, and let's hope Max. The curse is strong, and Max doesn't get his own way, and he ends up beating Vettel's record. Although I did see the last time Vettel won, not when he won his 9 consecutive races. The following 6 seasons were won by Lewis Hamilton. So just saying.
It's funny you mentioned Vettel actually, because I was just thinking about Monza and like what's one of my fondest Monza memories, and it is actually Sebastian Vettel winning in a Ferrari and then doing the crazy frog down the radio afterwards.
Or when he won his first ever win in the AlphaTauri.
Was that a Monza?
Toro Rosso, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. His first win in the wet. He was out of nowhere. He came out and stormed it.
Well, let's hope he rocks up next weekend. It's good luck charm.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, that's all the best from us. I'll have a voice next week. And it won't be as husky as this. All the best and goodbye.
Bye-bye.